Most women I talk to think kissing is something you can get wrong, like there's a test happening. Like he's sitting there with a scorecard. And the older we get, the louder that voice becomes. I remember the first time I kissed someone after a long stretch of being alone. I wasn't thinking about chemistry. I was thinking, is she okay with this? Does she want to be here? He is not grading you. He's hoping you'll stay. And the 5 things men actually notice when they kiss you, every single one of them, is something a woman who has truly lived already carries. You just haven't been told that yet. What he notices first isn't perfection. It's whether your energy feels open enough to let him all the way in. 1. The warmth he's reading. Most of us spent years worrying we weren't enough. In a kiss, that worry doesn't disappear. He feels it. And what he's feeling for, more than anything else, is whether you're actually there. I don't mean physically. I mean the kind of there where your mind isn't running a quiet checklist in the background. B, where you're not half in and half somewhere else, wondering how you look, whether this is moving too fast, whether he can feel how nervous you are. Men feel that distance. We may not have words for it in the moment, but we feel it. There's a difference between kissing someone who is with you and kissing someone who is performing with you. One feels like contact, the other feels like touching a closed door. What he's actually reading is your warmth, not warmth like body temperature. Warmth like openness, like the quiet signal that says, I am here right now, and so are you. Here's what I want you to understand about that warmth, specifically at this stage of life. Younger women often struggle to let it through because it requires something grief and loss teach you the hard way, that this moment is the only one you're guaranteed. Then, a 2020 study, published in the journal Emotion, found that adults over 60 consistently scored higher on present moment awareness during emotionally meaningful experiences than adults in their 30s and 40s. The researchers called it emotional wisdom. I'd call it something simpler. You've buried people you loved. You've watched things you thought were permanent disappear overnight. You know, in a way, a 35-year-old simply cannot yet know that the person in front of you right now is not a given. That knowing changes the warmth you bring into a kiss. You don't have to manufacture it. You already carry it closer than you realize. The work isn't learning something new. It's permitting yourself to stop pretending you're somewhere else. Close your eyes. Let the moment be the only thing that exists. Not because a video told you to. Because you, more than most, already understand what it means when a moment passes and doesn't come back. That warmth is not a technique. It's the thing that makes everything else matter. Now, once that warmth is there, once you've let yourself actually land in the moment, the next thing he feels isn't something you say. It's something you do with your hands. 2. What your hands already know. I want to tell you something about your hands. Not what to do with them. What they already carry. Think about what those hands have done over the past 60-some years. They've held newborns. They've gripped a steering wheel at 2 in the morning when someone you loved was in the hospital. They've signed papers you didn't want to sign. They've made thousands of meals, smoothed down hair, wiped tears that weren't your own. They've let go of people you weren't ready to let go of. Those hands are not neutral. They are not empty. And when you put them on someone during a kiss, he feels all of that. Not consciously. He couldn't name it if you asked him. But the body keeps a kind of record, and so does his. Touch that comes from a life fully lived feels different from touch that is still figuring itself out. Research in affective neuroscience, including work from the Touch Research Institute at the University of Miami, has shown that the quality of human touch communicates emotional history in ways that words cannot replicate. We are wired to read each other through contact. What he's reading in your hands is not technique, it's history, it's tenderness that had to be earned. Beeson, it's the particular gentleness of someone who has learned, sometimes painfully, how fragile the people we love actually are. So when you reach for him, don't worry about whether you're doing it right. Don't hold back because you're not sure where to put them. Just place them somewhere and mean it. That intention is everything. Viewing, hands that have truly lived don't need instructions. Now, right alongside your hands, there's something else he's noticing. Something quieter. Something most women don't even realize they're doing. 3. Breathing. There's something nobody tells you about nervousness. It lives in your lungs before it ever reaches your face. I've watched it happen. 2 people who genuinely want to be there are there, and one of them quietly stops breathing. Not all the way, just shallower. A held half-breath. And the moment changes. Something that was opening slowly closes. For women who've been away from this for a while, the held breath isn't random. It has a reason. It's the body's way of asking, am I okay here? Does he notice how much has changed? Am I still, and this is the word I hear most, still someone he wants to keep kissing? That's not anxiety about the kiss. That's decades of being taught to take up less space, to be a little smaller. To wait and see before you let yourself land. Here's what the science of touch actually says about this. Researchers studying nonverbal communication have found that regulated, slow breathing during close physical contact is one of the strongest unconscious signals of emotional safety a person can send. Not arousal. Safety. He's not reading your breath as a performance indicator. He's reading it as, does she trust this? And a woman who has lived 60-some years, who has navigated loss, raised people, rebuilt herself at least once, carries a particular kind of trust in her body when she finally chooses to let it through. Not the trust of someone who has nothing to lose. The trust of someone who knows exactly what she's choosing and chooses it anyway. That is not a small thing. Men our age feel it the way you feel a room change temperature. We can't explain it. We just know something opened. Your breath is not background noise. It's the first thing that tells him whether you're still deciding or whether you've already arrived. That breath, when it finally settles, is the moment something else becomes possible. Something most people spend years trying to learn, and something you, at this point in your life, already carry without realizing it. 4. Matching energy. Researchers at the University of British Columbia conducted a series of studies on older couples between the ages of 60 and 87. Rather than focusing on traditional metrics like desire or physical compatibility, they measured daily behavioral coordination and mutual goal pursuit. The single strongest predictor of how harmoniously 2 people function together was one core psychological factor: felt understanding, not chemistry, no experience. Understood. Most people will tell you that matching energy is a technique. Follow his lead. Slow when he slows. Meet him where he is. That's not wrong. It's just the surface of something much harder to teach. D. Have you ever danced with someone who was counting the steps? You feel it immediately. The slight delay. The body that's thinking instead of moving. It doesn't matter how technically correct they are. Something is missing, and you know it before you could ever name it. That's not wrong advice. It's just the surface of something much larger. Here's what the science actually shows about this. When two people feel genuinely understood, not just heard, but understood, their nervous systems begin to regulate each other. Heart rate, breath rhythm, even cortisol levels. Researchers call it co-regulation. It doesn't happen through effort. It happens when the body stops bracing. You cannot co-regulate with someone you're performing for. You can only co-regulate with someone you've decided to actually be with. And deciding that really deciding, not just going through the motions, is not something a 35-year-old body has been asked to do enough times to trust itself. When someone your age syncs with you in a kiss, it stops being about matching pace or pressure. It becomes something closer to recognition. A quiet signal that says, I have been through things too. I see what you've carried. I'm not going anywhere. That cannot be performed by someone who hasn't lived it. You're not following his lead. You're meeting him as someone who has already arrived. There's one more thing he's reading. Something most women at this stage have spent decades learning to hide. And the hiding, it turns out, is the only thing standing between you and the most attractive version of yourself in that moment. D-Win-5 showing desire. When a woman holds back when she's enjoying something, but keeps her face still, keeps her body careful, keeps her reaction just slightly smaller than what she actually feels, I notice. Not because it bothers me. Because I can feel the gap between what's happening and what she's letting through. That gap is the loneliest feeling in the world. Most women your age were raised in an era that had very clear instructions about desire. Don't be too eager. Don't seem like you want it too much. Let him lead. Be warm but contained. Be responsive but not overwhelming. Those instructions made sense once, in a world that punished women for wanting openly. They don't belong in a kiss with someone you've chosen. And yet the body remembers what it was trained to do. Even when the mind knows better, the hands stay a little still. The sound stays swallowed. The lean stays held back. Research out of the University of Toronto found something worth sitting with. When people suppress what they actually feel during intimacy, when they hold back the expression of desire, both partners report lower satisfaction. Not just him. Both. The gap between what you feel and what you let through doesn't stay invisible. He lives in it too. Needs to feel that you want to be there, not performed, not managed, actually there. And the only way he feels that is if you let what you feel come through. A small sound, a tighter hold, a breath that says yes instead of maybe. This isn't advice about technique. This is permission that, if we're honest, is decades overdue. You are allowed to want this. You are allowed to show it, not for his feedback, not so he does more of what you like. Simply because you are a person who feels things and you have earned the right to stop pretending otherwise. The most attractive thing you can bring into that moment isn't grace or calm or control. It's the truth of what you feel. The 5 things, and not one of them is a technique. Warmth, Hands, breath, recognition, the truth of what you feel. Every single one of them is something you have been building your entire life without knowing that's what you were doing. The woman who walked into her first kiss at 22 had none of this. She had youth, yes. She had a body that hadn't yet learned what it was capable of holding. But she didn't have what you have now. She hadn't earned it yet. You are not being tested. You are being met. And everything you have lived through, every loss, every silence, every moment you chose to keep going, is something he can feel. It is the most attractive thing in the room. Before you go, I want to ask you something. And I mean this sincerely. Tell me in the comments, what's one thing about intimacy at this stage of life that nobody ever talks about, but you wish someone would? It doesn't have to be about kissing. It doesn't have to be polished or perfectly worded. It can be a fear, a question, something you've carried quietly for a long time and never had the right place to put it. I'm listening, and there are no wrong answers here.